Good morning, students. Today we will discuss about the concept of strong entity and the weak entity types. What do you mean by strong entity and what do you mean by weak entity? An entity which is having their own key, then that entity we will call it as a strong entity. Then an entity type which do not have a key attribute of their own, we will call it as a weak entity type. Okay, so then see here also, for example, suppose if a student USN, that is a student is an entity type, in that a USN is the key attribute of the student, then that one a student will call it as a strong entity type. Okay, so when you come to weak entity type, suppose in a company employee is working, so employee is having their employee number, he is a strong entity type. Suppose his dependents, his family members, they are not nowhere related to company. So but suppose if he wants to take an insurance for their dependents, so then we will make it that one as those dependents are a weak entity because they don't have a key of their own. So then those things, those type of entities, we'll call it as a weak entity types. Okay, so here weak strong entity types, they are having their own key. Then weak entity types, they are having a set of attributes that can be uniquely identified. Okay, so here the combination of that attributes, okay, so we will call it as a partial key. Okay, so in a weak entity types, they are having a partial key. Strong entity types, they are having keys. Okay, so here a weak entity type will have a partial key, which is the set of attributes that can be uniquely identify weak entities. Okay, so here we have a name, first name, date of birth, and like that we'll have a different attributes. The combination of all those things, some set of attributes, we'll call it as a weak entity partial key. Okay, so then strong entity type will have its own primary key. Okay, each strong entity types, they will have their own primary key. So if there's a for student having US and employee is having a employee number. Okay, college having college code, like that. For every strong entities, they have their own primary key. Then weak entity type is dependent on strong entity type for its existence and will not have a primary key of its own. Okay, but it may have partial key. So here when you come to weak entity type, is dependent on strong entity type. That family members are dependent on that particular employee, but they don't have a primary key, but they have a partial key. Set of attributes, they have a partial key, but they don't have their own primary key. Suppose if they want a primary key for weak entity, it is a combination of a strong entity type of primary key. Okay, so that is the strong entity plus primary key of that strong entity type plus the partial key of that weak entity type. That combination of those two things, we will call it as a primary key of that weak entity. That is the combination of a primary key of strong entity type on which it is dependent plus a one partial key. Okay, that partial key and strong entity type, the combination of those two things, we will call it as a primary key of that weak entity type. Okay, so here the partial key, how will represent in ER diagram? Okay, the partial keys are underlined with a dotted line or a dashed line. In a oval, so we will write an weak entity name. Okay, weak key attribute name, partial key attribute name, and we will make a dotted line. Okay, then weak entity types are represented in ER diagram by two concentric rectangle. Okay, if one concentric rectangle is there,